Welcome everyone to our third session, and let us prepare ourselves for the work ahead by grounding ourselves. And so I invite you to notice where you are, the connections that you have to the chair and with your feet on the ground. You may feel the ground connection through your sit bones on the chair, as well as through your feet. And as you notice this connection through the chair and the floor, notice that it connects you to the building, which connects you to the ground. And through the ground, you are connected to all that is in the earth and all that is on the earth and all that lives in it and on it. And in this, you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And notice your breathing. And notice how the air that you breathe connects you to the air in the room, which connects you to the air throughout the building that you are in, which connects you to the air outside the building you are in, which connects you to the atmosphere around the planet Earth. And through this air, in this air, you are connected to all that is in the air, the winged ones and all that lives in the air. And through it, you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And notice the water that is in your body, the moisture that allows you to blink your eyes, the moisture in your nose and mouth. And notice that as you breathe, your breath contains water too. And know that you are connected to the water in the air, and through the ground, you are connected to the water in the ground under you, and connected to the waters that flow in rivers and streams and that collects in lakes and seas and oceans, and the water that is in frozen form and snow all around. And know that you are connected to all that is in the water, all that lives in the water. And in this water, you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And notice your energy, the power that you have to move, the power to breathe, the power to think, the power to love, this spark of life, the electricity that is the spark of life in you is the fire of life in you. And in this fire of life, you are connected to the energy that is all around, the lights in the lights of the building, the lights in the sky. And through this energy, you are connected to the energy of all creation. And you are connected to Creator God. Take a moment to give thanks. And as you continue in your connection through your breath and through the floor and the ground and the water and the fire that is in you. Give thanks. And in your gratitude, notice that in creation and in God, you are connected to the people around the earth and to the peoples in the land where you are now. Many different kinds of relationships. Acknowledge with gratitude the relationships you have with people in this land. And in this gratitude, remind yourself of the first peoples who have inhabited this land since time immemorial. Notice your connections to the first peoples. You may have an ancestral connection, or you may have a relational connection, having come later. Notice that relationships exist between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in this land, and there are blessings in these relationships, and there is brokenness in these relationships. Still breathing in gratitude, acknowledge the harms caused to Indigenous peoples with the arrival of European settlers in this land. Acknowledge the ways in which you and your peoples are connected to these relationships, broken as they are, blessed as they are. Acknowledge the ways that these brokennesses impact you. And people around you. And offer yourself as a channel of healing, a channel of the Spirit's healing presence for yourself and for others in these relationships. And remind yourself again of the gift of the presence of Creator God, and offer gratitude for earth and air and water and fire and the presence of Creator's love in all of this. As we touch brokenness and as we are part of healing, we are not alone. God is with us. Thanks be to God. Take a moment to breathe in and out and offer an amen, either out loud or in the energy of your mind and heart. May it be so. And friends, it's not easy to talk about race, which is what we are about in this next hour and a bit. And know that, be aware that an experience or a wound might be touched. In fact, it might even be something that you are aware of as you come into this space. And there might be something that is touched or connects in a painful way as we engage in this topic. And remember that you can say ouch if something touches you in a way that hurts. Excuse me. All right, I have allergies. I'm going to put my mask on because it stops the allergies. So if something arises that you say ouch to, in some contexts, we're able to stop and have a conversation about the situation. But this evening, we have a set of things to discuss and connect with. And so if you say ouch, and you are okay with caring for yourself in that moment and continue on as you need to. You may take a pause and step back and take a bit of a break if you need to. Please feel free to reach out to Diane Blanchard and myself. We are both here as pastoral support. Our phone numbers will be placed into the chat momentarily. And know that at the end of our session, Alcris will be available as well. So should you wish to share or engage a bit more at the end of the time. Okay. The way that I'm going to invite us to engage in the respectful guidelines for this week, we have gone through them each session already. And so instead of explaining them, I'm going to invite us to do what we call the baptismal formula. And so I will ask you for each of the guidelines, will you? And read out the guideline, and then the response you are invited to say is, I will with God's help. Take a moment just to remind us that we create a space together. So once we have agreed to the guidelines, if you notice that we're not using these guidelines, we invite you to say, I've noticed the conversation we're having doesn't seem to be holding the respect and guidelines, and I wonder if we could revisit them. And that in particular might happen in your small group discussions. So your response that I invite is, I will with God's help. And I'm going to invite you to unmute so that we can hear one another. So just take a moment and turn on your microphone so that we can hear one another respond to these. Will you take responsibility for what you say and feel without blaming others?
I will with God's help.
Will you use empathetic listening?
I will with
God's help.
Will you be sensitive to differences in communication styles?
I will with God's help.
Will you ponder what you hear and feel before you speak?
I will
with God's help.
Will you examine your own assumptions and perceptions?
I will
with God's help.
Will you keep confidentiality, share constructively to uphold the well-being of the community?
I will
with God's help.
Will you trust ambiguity because we are not here to debate who is right or wrong?
I will
with God's help.
Will you say ouch if something has been said that is painful for you?
I will with God's help.
And does anybody have any questions or anything that you would like to add to our guidelines for today? Okay, well, we have agreed to these guidelines. So I turn it over to Alcris and to John to carry forward.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you everybody for coming back today. We acknowledge that, as Therese said, these conversations are not easy because we all have this category in our lives and we are impacted by it in the way of privilege or in the way of marginalization and other impacts. So we are on holy ground as we are inviting God's presence in this sacred space. And it is sacred because we're sharing our stories, reflections, insights, who we are, and we commit to honor it. We commit tonight to God our stories, who we are, and what we want to become in God's church, in God's love here and now. So, in the name of the one who is love, we say Amen. We are on the third part of this workshop, United 360 of the United Church. So even when we started on part one about ourselves, taking a look of ourselves, we acknowledge that this is not something to do by your own. This is done in community and is not the job of racialized people only or white people only. We need to do it together and we need one another. So we'll start by acknowledging that community is to stand and be in a brave space. And collaboration is creating a brave space. And together we will create brave spaces on our paths. The agenda for today, we're going to go back a little bit, very briefly, of where we have been in these past sessions. The first one was looking back at ourselves. The second one was looking around at our context. If you remember, we had the perspectives of being a fly on the wall, a perspective of standing on a balcony, and being among the crowd looking for Waldo. We talked about adaptive work and leadership, and today we're going to look ahead of this United Church of ours. But we're not going to stand outside to criticize the church. We're going to be inside of the church because we are part of this church, I assume. And if we're not, at least we're curious, or we are, with a little bit of desire of becoming part of the church. Then we are going to look at the United Church Antiracism policy, and we're going to develop our personal purpose. We have two small groups, and we will end making all connections, but with new eyes. And some final thoughts. In the first session and in the second, and now I remember and want to remind us that it's okay and it's expected to be uncomfortable. Moving, if you remember, this is the comfort zone when we feel unchallenged. You feel that, okay, I've heard this, I'm okay with this. but there is a zone where I'm going to call it this week the zone of anti-racism disequilibrium, or the zone of growth, or the zone of learning. But when we talk about intercultural and anti-racism, this becomes the zone where everything starts changing and shaking, and we have to do new things and learn and unlearn. So this is the zone where I hope we can stay today. And this is the zone of panic. When we go to a panic zone, we usually get paralyzed, or we get defensive, or angry, or we react with emotions that sometimes we don't recognize or we don't know why. And that's why we have two pastoral support people available to you. So you may need to unpack why are you in the panic zone. It's not that it's bad, it is normal, but we need to unpack or think and go back to the zone of disequilibrium.
Alcris, would it be useful for you to share your screen with that slide? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I thought I was sharing. Yeah, thanks, John. I thought I was sharing. I thought, oh, this is going so well. I'm sharing. Okay. So, am I sharing now?
Yes, but you need to put it on slideshow.
Yeah. Okay. And here you are all. Yeah. Okay, I'm here. This is the comfort zone.
Yeah, that's the one.
Disequilibrium, or the zone of growth or learning. And this is the panic. That is okay, but it's not okay to stay there. So we need to unpack or talk with somebody, or to articulate why or where are you that makes you feel that way, and be aware that you need to work on that, and you come back to the zone of disequilibrium, or uncomfort, or discomfort. Also, we talked about the stairway of oppression, that everything starts with stereotypes, they become beliefs. When we believe that, become prejudices and start becoming our values, and these produce us to have biases, and that they provoke unconscious actions, and these actions turn into discrimination, and then once they are enacted, become, and when they are supported by this, that the white supremacy culture, they become normal and acceptable. And the thing here is that the system normalizes and validates and dictates and makes itself invisible. So I put a few arrows here for us to think, because this is very important, and I'm reminding you about the first session. This means that we're not so powerless. We have power. Maybe we cannot in this unless you have a government or a church, or but we can interrupt all of this. We can start training our eyes to see what is happening, to hear. There is a verse in Isaiah that Isaiah prayed for ears to listen with wisdom. And I always thought about wisdom, about what we talk, but this is about what to hear with wisdom. So what can we do with stereotypes? We can, if you can give me ideas. we could interrupt them. Do you have any ideas? We can question stereotypes. We can interrogate them so they don't turn into beliefs, because stereotypes are generalizations about groups or people that have parts of truth, but they are not the real truth. With prejudices, we can identify them, we can question them. Do you get what I'm trying to do here? Like, we have power in all of this to do anti-racism and to develop eyes that, remember that in the first session, we try, part of anti-racism is to make visible the invisible. So to make visible the stereotypes that are in jokes, that are in comments, that are in opinions about other people, to develop wise ears that can listen to really what has been said, to interrupt biases and question that, interrogate them, and to look for gaps where people are discriminated against. So this is personal action. We also saw in the first session this is called the iceberg of culture, but it is a tool that is well used in different contexts. But the idea is that on the top of the iceberg is what we see, food and conversations, communication styles, music, what we see about culture, what we experience. But underneath the surface, there is a deep culture happening. That is what we have learned implicitly, what is unconscious, what is difficult to change, and is part of our subjective knowledge. And it's linked to beliefs, values, and patterns of thinking. So that's why we started doing anti-racism with ourselves. I told you to know where you were located, and it's important for us to know ourselves. What prejudices do we have? What we learned when we were kids, or what we continue to believe because of social media or because the church. And in the second part, when we talked about our context, I brought this again, but this includes, like paying attention to this, we will identify patterns that happens, structures, and what beliefs and values support this to happen. And by doing that, we located ourselves as a fly on the wall, as a view from the balcony where we could see patterns, identify what's happening. And as a fly, we're not involved, but we are, aware of everything that is happening. And like Waldorf, we're walking with other people. So those are three perspectives that are useful for our anti-racism. And we talked last week about adaptive leadership, that it is the leadership that happens in this area. It is on the disequilibrium part, and it takes time. The thing with anti-racism is sometimes we say, well, nothing is happening, everything takes too long, like I don't see changes in my church, in my context. And it's because we want quick solutions, we want to fix things. We are working on the surface level, so we produce results, but in areas where we need transformation, we need this type of leadership that stays in this zone, that is a disequilibrium zone, that is the uncomfortable part, and we know that it will take time to get the results. And it's not as easy. Well, I know that if this is happening, I will apply this program, or if this is happening, we're going to do a Bible study on this, or I will fix it from the pulpit. No, this needs time. It needs persistence. For example, and I'm trying to do it quickly, we have two different type of problems from this perspective. Technical problems, we have clear specific goals, we apply methods that we know, we don't need to learn anything else, we have resources that are available because we have done it before, we know whose role is what, we have competencies, and we manage change in predictable ways. When something like racism or any ism, homophobia, transphobia, we want to get transformed, we have no idea how it will happen. We don't have the methods, the methodology, we don't have the program. It requires new learning. Resources are not identifiable. That's why this is a zone of disequilibrium. We want to change something, to be transformed ourselves as well. And there is no clear route, there is no clear outcome, there is new learning involved. The roles are not, already decided. Competencies need to be developed, and we need to become different. As last time we had some strategies, we'll get on the balcony because it will show us our own participation, our own complicity, how we are from a role, we can look down and see how is our participation, how can we influence the patterns that we saw happening when we were on the wall like a fly. The other tool is to see the iceberg for patterns, structures, and beliefs. So you're noticing, you are making the invisible visible. One of the characteristics of the adaptive leaders is that they hold that space of disequilibrium. They don't run away, they don't do something else. Instead, they hold that space of being uncomfortable, of not knowing. For example, right now we are in times that are, again, unprecedented. We are in difficult times in the world, but especially in our context with the US and many other countries. So it is a time where we really don't know what will happen, how we can resist, how can we contribute, and that's a space of disequilibrium. In this type of leadership, usually when we want to offer a technical solution, we call a third one. We call an expert, we call a consultant. That is not bad, I'm not against that. Sometimes it's necessary, but that person comes and tries to fix. And what we are suggesting is giving the work to the people to become a problem, a situation of the whole community. And usually the participation of people who are the most affected, they can become the people of the solution, not because that is a responsibility, but it is because they know what is needed. They know what changes we need to make. They know of the impact of the things we do that we think are okay or are normal. And another aspect of the adaptive leadership is to be curious, not impose that we know, like, for example, we're going to work with refugees and we know that they need a workshop on immigration. Who are we to know what they need? Let's talk with them, let's be curious, they see what their needs are, how they feel, and then we provide support. Adaptive work is not a quick solution, it persists over time, does not get resolved with quick punctual solutions, and it's time, persistence, collaboration, and maintain that disequilibrium environment. Okay, I'm repeating this. And okay, so do you have any question about all what I said that you want to share before we go back to our homework? Because we had homework for today. Okay. You all look like, yeah, no, not yet. So going back from the slides, John will take us through the homework, and then we are going to have breakout rooms.
Okay, everyone. Hello, and thank you, Alcris, for giving us all that content over again. So our homework was to look at the anti-racist work of the United Church and to reflect on it, or to identify where we've come, how far we've come. Anyone have any thoughts or anything to start us off? Oh, yes, Phyllis.
So one, excuse me, one thing that I've noticed is that there has been quite a lot of focus put on using hymns from different traditions around the world to respect the language that they were originally written in, and to respect the cultures that they come from, and to do that in all the ways that are appropriate in a worship service, and making sure the attributions are there and so on. With the idea being that if we share this music from around the world, it will not only introduce us to different ways of seeing God and being Christian, that it will let us provide a much more inclusive welcome to people who may come, and it may be that that it doesn't happen, that no one ever comes, but we will all be the richer for experiencing these hymns that come from other cultures. And I've heard of a story. I don't know where it was, though, that there was one time that a congregation was singing a hymn in one of the African languages. I think it might have been Shona, and someone came in. That was their language. They heard a hymn that they had known from home, and they were just so thrilled. And it's a way to do a radical welcome in a kind of user-friendly way, I guess.
Okay, yes, excellent. Anyone else have examples or thoughts? Diane, sure, please share.
I'm carrying on. Oh, dear, something went in front of my screen. Every once in a while, a pop-up comes that covers everybody up. It's very distressing, and I don't know how to get rid of it because I'm not technologically savvy enough. Carrying on with what Phyllis was saying, I watched the presentation of the new digital hymn book that's coming out as our 100th anniversary approaches. And one of the things that I heard in that presentation, I think I heard, because sometimes I mishear, and I'll apologize if I have. But there's a fear of singing a language that you don't know because you won't pronounce the words properly. And their thing was, it's okay to feel uncomfortable about not pronouncing the words properly and just to try it, because of all their other people who come with English as a second or a third or a fourth language, and they have to sing it in that language and they feel uncomfortable. So why shouldn't we have a little of that discomfort? So that's learning by getting out of your comfort zone, but you don't have to panic, right? Even if you pronounce it incorrectly, it's nice that you tried.
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I know other people have other things to say, and you'll get a chance in your small groups to continue the conversation. But the ones that I really want to focus on the big picture. The United Church, we've got 100 years history that stretches way back, and we've come a long way around our anti-racist work as we've become more and more aware of our practices and the way we are together. But the one that came to my mind was the apology to the Indigenous, well, the two apologies to the Indigenous people for our role in colonialism, and then the second apology, which was specifically focused on the residential schools, and I think out of that the church really began to become aware, oh, racism is something, it's not external to the church, it's something that is a part of the church, and we really need to come to grips with that. So the church, in very small ways, has begun that examination kind of work to participate in anti-racist work. And then much more recently, the commitment to be anti-racist is a big highlight for me as well. So do you want to take us to small groups at this point, or do you have more to say?
I think Lillian wants to say something.
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Oh, okay.
I think we have gone a long way from Al Forrest's time when he wrote the book, The Unholy Land, after living with refugees for 7 months. But in Windsor area, where we have a lot of Muslims, and some of them are interested in knowing more about the United Church and attending the United Church, in 2 different churches that I've been in, they didn't feel very welcomed. And today, as is Ramadan, they're fasting. And I passed one of the churches that I took them to that they didn't feel welcome at. And they had a big sign, they have pork supper. I mean, if you are sensitive to the Muslim people in your community, you wouldn't have pork supper during Ramadan. I just saw it. I mean, on my way from the grocery. I couldn't believe they have pork supper and they know it's Ramadan. They should know that to be sensitive to the people who live around them and trying to get to know Christianity more, that will take them off completely. Anyhow, we need to be more sensitive, and the United Churches in Windsor are not sensitive enough. And some of them are, as far as I'm concerned, terrible. They don't want to pray for Gaza. They don't want to pray for the people in Gaza, as Gaza is starving to death right now. And that makes me very sad.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lillian. You mentioned something very important, to be sensitive, to be respectful, and to, it's so difficult to, like, we can be welcoming in our hearts, but how to do it? I was in a church not long ago, and there were 3 of us who were racialized, 2 from Africa, 2 different countries, and myself, and we were very welcome and all of that. But when there was the coffee hour, the 3 of us were sitting by ourselves in a table, and everyone else in the other tables. So I think there is something needed to fill that gap or bridge that bridge, that we get used or we are more intentional instead of staying in the panic zone. I don't know how to talk with them. I feel uncomfortable because I don't know them. I don't want, I don't know what to say, even though I want to welcome them. And what's happening with the Muslim people. And what Phyllis mentioned was very good as well, like little things. Sometimes we feel that racism is so huge that there is nothing we can do, but there is lots we can do. Even that step of bringing songs and hymns from another culture, what made me feel welcome in the United Church, even though I came as a Presbyterian, but I started going to the United Church for work to Bloor Street, is that they embraced us and immediately started to have at least one hymn in Spanish to celebrate our culture, inviting us. Well, my ex-husband, he used to play an instrument, he invited him, or for communion, Alcris, bring arepas, and, to have them at the altar. There are little things that makes other people to feel important and valued and welcome, and I stayed. That was in 1996, and I haven't left. So thank you for that. And I want to invite you to go to the United Church website. There are lots of resources and there are lots of things happening that we can get engaged in, especially in our context to spread the voice. There are programs. There is the 40 days that starts in the fall. There are videos and all of that. So I want us to be in small groups, in pairs, and to think about two things. One, what at CCS, I work at the Center for Christian Studies, we offer feedback. Our students are trained in offering feedback, and we practice that as a way, as a tool for learning. So what we do is, one, we affirm, and we have a student here. She can affirm that, or we affirm the positive growth or what is happening, and we say we affirm your intentionality about naming whatever, and we encourage. We don't criticize people. When you criticize, it's like, this is the final word, but we encourage for them specifically to grow in something. Okay. So two ways, two things, and that's what I want you to do with your partner. Each one to say something to the United Church, a word of hope or affirmation. I affirm the United Church for this, this, and this, and I encourage the United Church, because the fact that we love the church, it doesn't mean that the church is perfect, as we are not perfect either. But one word of affirmation and one of encouragement. So that we will have 4 from each group, 2 and 2. And what would be the best way to collect that information, Therese, if they write it in the chat? Yeah, write in the chat, something, so we can collect that and you will get that back. So that don't stay in the air with no purpose. So we're going to be in pairs, and Michelle will do that, and we will be for 10 minutes. Okay, so you can have a little bit of a conversation about what you see good happening in the church and what we need to work more on.
Thank you, Alcris. I'll open the rooms now. Please turn on your video and your audio. Here you go. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. I want us to hear But the anti-racism policy that was written in 2000, and it's a beautiful document that you can find in the United Church website, says, and pay attention. Okay, these are a statements of belief. We believe we are all equal before God. So far, so good. We believe racism is a sin and violates God's desire for humanity. So this is a strong statement. We believe racism is present in our society and in our church, and throughout time has manifested itself in many forms in varying degrees. So we know that it's present not only in the world, but also in the church, and it has manifested in many degrees. Now we know that it hasn't manifested, for example, with the Japanese encampments or Chinese encampments, but it's something that continues to happen every day through microaggressions and, through policies, through not seeing the other person and all of that. So we believe, pay attention to this, that the struggle against racism is a continuous effort, what I was saying, persistent. Therefore, our anti-racism policy statement is only a first step. It provides it provides the basis. It provides the basis for the creation of the church, where all are welcome, where all feel welcome, and where diversity is as natural as breathing. We believe change is possible. We believe in forgiveness, reconciliation, and transformation, and the potential to learn from stories and experiences. For example, we heard Lillian, and we learned from that story. We believe we are called to work against racism, so all of us, and for a society in which the words of the gospel are realized among us. So it's not that this is the trend. We come from the gospel call for all of us. We believe in a vision of society in which these words and gospel are realized. It is through faith and that all of you are God's people in union with Christ Jesus. You are baptized into union with Christ, and now you are clothed, so to speak, with life of Christ. So there is no difference between Jews and Gentiles, between slaves and free persons. Between men and women, you are all one in union with Jesus Christ, and this is Galatians 3:28. So from our anti-racism policy, they called for 4 actions. One was full participation, that we know that anti-racism is working when we see full participation. And sometimes we stop with tokenism. So we are in a committee and we have one person that is a racial minority, and we think, okay, we did it. There is diversity, and that's not full participation. It's full participation when the person feels open and free, accepted, to have an accent, to have a different point of view, that they can contribute to the whole, that they feel appreciated, that they feel validated, and that's, for everybody. It's not only for racialized people. So we are called to provide or to create spaces for full participation for all of us, because we are all children of God. The other call to action was to organize for diversity, and that is to take into account who is present, who is not present, and why. as we talked about the first week, not only why, but also how they can be present. What we need to fix, what we need to change, how we need to enter in that disequilibrium so other people can be part. And I'm very careful saying included, because when we include means that we have the power to say, okay, you can and you can't. So expand ourselves so people can participate fully. The other, we are called to full participation. Yeah, and in that full participation, we understand that is hospitality, and hospitality is one of the major values of our church, right? When we potlucks, when we go to the basement for coffee time. So we're called to practice that hospitality as a stand that is anti-racist. How can we do that? If we think about hospitality, there is a host, there is a guest. What is the role of the host? The host decides on the menu. The host decides at what time the guests will show up. It decides, how, if they were going to play games or talk about travel or show them pictures. So the host has the best intention to welcome the guest, but the host has full control. What is the role of the guest? To eat whatever is served, to show up at the time they were invited to just to surrender to how the night or the evening will go. So as we can see, there is a power differential there. It is good to invite, it is good to offer hospitality, but we need now to step back and rethink about those roles, so when we, if we're opening up for people from diverse groups, to think, how are we offering hospitality? Do we see them as the people we want to help? That is a colonial mentality. We have, they need, we know, they don't, so we teach. So how can we revert that? And the policy talks about mutuality. And that is a new way that is old, because it's in the New Testament, right, John, about mutuality. Receive one another, love one another, encourage one another, confess one another. So there is that mutuality as a value of the reign of God, that we need to include that lens again to rethink about hospitality. Yeah, give me a sec. So, yeah. And the other thing is to rethink or to go back. What do we think racism is? In the policy, it says it's a sin. But through history, we have embraced and then the definition that racism is something very bad, done by very bad people against others. So we have this distortion about what is racism, and we don't want to feel or being seen as a bad person. So we derail, we detour, or we deny anything that has to be with the topic. So when you do anti-racism work, be aware that there will be resistance, and some of the resistance will be these 3Ds: detours, derailing the conversation or the action or the practice, and detouring. Let's do this instead. Or what about women? And what about this? And so when you do anti-racism, you have to hold that space that is uncomfortable, that is naming, that is speaking truth for something good, for something better. We are not only to dismantle, but we're also going to construct. And we're building the reign of God in doing that. So, and also to consider that in this definition that I just told you, intention is, it doesn't matter because we come with good intentions. But the definition of racism according to the policy is that racism is measured by the impact on the other. So intention, it doesn't matter. So we need to create this sensitivity, as Lillian mentioned, of know what impact there will be in the other group. So here there are some concrete frames and language and practices. So I want to invite you, before we finish, to create your own anti-racist, and please write this down, anti-racist personal purpose. And this is like your anti-racist mission, your role, because we are all part of the church. So what is my role? So I want you to consider, one, your origin, your ethnicity. Like I could say, well, I am Alcris and I'm raised, I was born and raised in Venezuela, and my grandparents, one from Italy, one from Spain, and they married two Venezuelans, and I am now out of my country of origin. I'm in Canada, and here I am a person of color, but I have the paradox that I'm also Canadian. So, just talk about your own, write that down. You talk about your passion and the gaps you see. So from these weeks, what do you see it needs to happen in your context, in yourself, or in the church? So the gaps, your passion. The passion usually is like a call. That we see something happening and we see inside of us, we say, I could do this, or I would like to be part of that, or this issue really boils my blood. So your passion, your origin, the gaps, and the last one is your gift. What gifts do I have? Do I have the gift to make connections, to build bridges, to say the truth, to identify? Do I have an analytical mind? And knowing that these competencies can be, can grow, if we put intention into working on them. So for the very last minutes, I want us to be in small groups and share with your partner what do you see is your role in this anti-racism in the United Church? What is my role? What can I do? So I know that you will do your personal purpose after this session, because that needs for you to sit and really think and make a good one. And if you want to share it with me, we can put my email in the chat, or with John. So we can have a conversation with you about that. So, Michelle, if we can have small groups, we have about for 5 minutes. So I have a prayer for the last 2 minutes.
Welcome back, folks.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And Alcris is going to share the poem with us. So.
Yeah. Were you able to start with your anti-racist personal purpose statement?
To some extent.
Okay. This is something that we can, work on. It will give you clarity and it will feel, okay, I am empowered, so I can do something and I can build relationships and have allies and people we can do this together. So we're going to finish with a grateful heart. It is very encouraging and a happy occasion that you want to talk about anti-racism in the context of our church. No, not only to fill out our brains with more information, but to do something. And we're here because we care about the church. So thank you so much. And I put my email in the chat. So John and I are going to share this. These are words for us to finish. We exist in the real world where there is no such thing as a safe space.
We all carry scars, and we have all caused wounds.
In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world.
We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere.
We call each other to more truth and love grow.
We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know.
We will not be perfect.
This space will not be perfect.
It will not always be what we wish it to be.
But it will be our brave space together, and
we will work on it side by side. And remember that, at the end of the day is love. To love others as we love ourselves, and all the love guidance that we find in the Gospels, I think, is applicable to this work. So again, thank you so much. And there is.
So thank you very much, Alcris. You have blessed us so much with your wisdom and guidance and with the space to reflect and to grow. Thank you, John, for your gentle presence and your guidance and your place in creating a space, a gracious space for learning. So thank you to you both.